All right, welcome back. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I organize things in OnX today. This is a pretty personal thing to you and how you choose to hunt, what species you choose to hunt, and just I think how you even think about things. But I hadn't seen many people organizing it quite in the way that I do, and it makes sense to me, and figured I would share it. So, just to kind of set the stage, there are a couple things that are important to know about how I had kind of approach hunting, because what your approach to hunting is affects how you might go about organizing your waypoints and utilizing folders and stuff like that. So first off, elk is my biggest, is the thing that I am focused on the most. Secondly, and then kind of mule deer right now is kind of secondary to that. While I currently have only hunted Montana, I do plan to hunt other states in the future. I rely heavily on escouting. I want to go into a season with more plans than I have. So I want to constantly build up and be able to refer back to a concept of like a hunt plan, a hunt area, and the plans, like the things that I've e-scouted in that area. And I might not get to it this year. I might get to that next year. A good example of this is in this past season for archery, I was not having great luck in the location that I had luck in last year, and was not really seeing any elk or much elk sign. And so on both my trips, I ended up bouncing out to other hunt plans that I had. One area was terrible. Maybe not terrible. One area was just like the buy-in to get into that country where I felt like elk would be, ended up being way more significant. I also saw a ton of grizz sign, or what I believe was grizz sign. So I didn't feel like I was going to stick around the area for a while. And then the second trip, I bounced to a different area through some places I e-scouted and found some areas that I thought were more promising, and I ended up hunting that for the next 3 days. I like to be able to have these options. That way, when I am not seeing the things that I hope to be seeing, I can move. We could get into that strategy and maybe the downsides. I didn't have long enough trips to fully invest in those new places. That's neither here nor there, kind of thinking through that. But I was able to still kind of get a lay of the land and get some boots on the ground. And that comes to a second point of how, or a second kind of thought around how I approach these things is, in the past, I've used all the things with the waypoints, names, the icons, and the colors to represent the things that I'm looking at. That way I can kind of like very quickly visually see, different feeding areas, different water, different, animal sign and stuff like that. And I've kind of shifted that a little bit with this to anything that's e-scouted is always going to be in purple. I utilize the icons, I utilize the names, but I always e-scout in purple, and then I will flip those to their color. And when you kind of see the folder structure that I have landed on, you'll see kind of how that those end up kind of migrating into like my in the field content. So let's hop into it. I mentioned that I have hunt plans, and so we're here in Glacier National Park, and because I'm just going to use this as an example, and we're going to rename this testing folder and add some things to it. But I have this concept of hunt plans, and so when I go about e-scouting, so I will come to an area that I like. Let's say I liked, I just placed this one here in the middle, and this is actually a fine example. let's say that I wanted to come hunt this basin. There was things about it that were interesting to me. I'm gonna kind of start by looking around. We don't have. It looks like this trail here would be the way that we would kind of get in here, something like that. I also noticed this landmark. I like using landmarks a lot for my naming conventions. I think if I were going to look at this one, but I would probably end up calling this like the Nyack Creek, my Nyack Creek hunt plan. Because the trail that I would be using, this Norris Mountain would be another option. It really is just a way to kind of clump a group of things together. So that's like a 2-mile basin. If we got up on these ridges, we could also probably hunt like down this basin here and this basin over here. Oh, that's a mountain actually. This basin here. We might be able to kind of run this ridge and do a couple different things. So we're going to call this Nyack Creek. When I utilize my naming, I will typically do something like, so I would do Nyack Creek. I typically initial it, and I would say like basin. And I, again, being that this is something that's being e-scouted, and whether I don't know whether or not this is like, great habitat or something that I want to focus on later. And I think I've talked about, like, for me, getting to places and seeing it as like a glassing point or something like that, and then not actually being able to glass from it. Yeah, I utilize this purple color to then basically say, oh, this is unverified. And that can especially go for things like, say we have, these are south-facing slopes here. So say we had a bench. This could be an interesting spot to look at as far as like bedding area or water. Water's another one. The creeks. Sometimes the creeks are running, depending on the amount of water we have had that year, and so we might see a difference in that. It's cool to verify that in the field, year to year, see when it is running, what that looks like. First things first, I would add this to my Montana hunt plans, and I would, go find like where I would park for this. This would be a hardcore hike. Let's say, let's pretend that, we found a trailhead. We were going to pack in here for a little bit, and then we were going to hop off trail where we place this. And so that would be here. So I usually will utilize like the line tool and do kind of a hike. I do these in black usually, the like hikes in. And I would say, looking at topo, like, hop off here, and then maybe come up this way. That's gonna probably suck. And then come, follow this way, something like that. I don't do, actually, here, let's do something like this. Run this contour line, and then get up here. I don't know, something like that. And so I would call this, I would use that same system, something like that. And again, save this to our folder, in our testing folder. One thing that I like about having two separate folders, I can look at all my hunt plans for the state that I have. If, like I said, if I was in a place where I was like, I wanted to go somewhere completely different, or I felt like, different terrain was going to be interesting. And then I have the specific folder. So let's go back and let's actually rename this testing folder to be something like that. Oh, and I typically will say I did forget this. Usually I will have something like that. So that's been my approach. So then I have this folder. I would add a bunch of things to it, etc. I would call out the different basins that I might look at. If I was looking at doing a loop, I would extend this line around that loop that I was thinking. All of these are hypotheses. They are not set in stone. That's why we use these different colors. When I actually get out in the field, I'll run tracking, and I might choose to go a completely different direction. I might find that as we get on the ground, this is like heavy deadfall, and it's easier to just like hike this ridge or something like that. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen once you're in the field, and I try to not be too prescriptive from my couch and be flexible once I get in the field. So the cool thing that I like about this system is that I can not only see all my hunt plans for a state, but then I can also use it in these different toggles. I can hide everything else and just focus in and kind of hone in on like only this folder, which will then remove all the other hunt plans and let me just kind of see the waypoints associated with this folder. And I would have let's say there was a road over here that came in. I would say like, okay, truck parking, and kind of where I plan to leave the truck even, and stuff like that. Utilizing the parking icon access. So we'll get into a few different things there. So I would use this parking. I recently switched to using the parking icon specifically for the planning, and then the truck icon where I actually leave my truck. That way it's just easy visual. So then my next thing is actually like when I'm in the field, I have a folder that is all the markings for when I'm in the field. Different, animal sign that I come across, what actually ends up being the case as far as like water goes or benches go or what have you. Like I'll call those out in the actual, like in the field. I have kind of a color system that's basically white for truck, pack dropping, like stopping points is the kind of the way I think of it. Any gates, anything like that is all in white. Any terrain features are in brown. Any, kind of like greenery, feeding areas, meadows, are all in green. So trails, wallows, scat. I typically use brown for a lot of those. And then animal sightings as well. And the colors are still kind of a work in progress. Glassing or bugling points, I will typically use yellow. And so those are easy to see once I kind of get there and basically say like, oh, I've been here. I know that this is a good spot to glass from, to bugle from. This is interesting, terrain wise. I've done it once before. I've stood here in the spot and can confirm. And then I'll use these like points of interest marker for like trails, not so much trails, for like saddles, for drainages, and basins, and like, I don't know, other little topography things that I don't feel like an icon, really captures. The last thing that I do is I want to have a in the field unit considerations, I guess. And so you see this like Montana 240. The things that I would put in there, things like trails that show up on the map that aren't actually like are now closed. I have been to some of those areas before where like it shows up on OnX on a map. It looks like an open trail, but then when you get to it, like it's been closed before. Conversely, like the flip side of that is like a trail that's closed, but it's overgrown, but it's still walkable. I want to make all those notes, and I want to have that in that unit specific folder. Gates and the gate closure dates. A good example of this was, because of how late archery season started here in Montana this year, starting on September 7th. It meant that season went longer than kind of normal. And so gates that would typically be open, actually, I should say, for the entirety of archery season were actually closed for that last week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. And so those are things that I want to make sure to call out and to like have noted when I see them and things like that. So I will make a lot of notes as far as those go. I typically mark those all in white. That also goes for like road access to there. So, if we were looking at how to access this trail, that I would kind of like have a, the road access. This isn't as good of an example because it's like, okay, looks like some of this comes right off the roads. But how I might be able, what side roads I might need to get off onto to make to make that trip to the trailhead or whatever. Those are some things that I consistently think of. And then I basically, as you kind of saw, organize into two in the field folders for the year. And so that one of those is fall, the other is spring. I have more recently been aiming to hunt black bear where I am elk hunting. And so I might actually do make some in the field waypoints and things like that for spring 2025 when I'm out there in the fall, and vice versa, right? Like, I might put some in the field panes in spring of 2025 for some things to look at in the fall. If I'm out hunting for one species and I see some things, I'm like, oh, that could be interesting to glass from, or to, specifically the glassing points is what I've done so far. The glassing points for south facing slopes, in the spring versus the north facing slopes in the fall, and so on. These are also noting when those gates open up in the spring versus in the fall is really valuable. There are definitely some areas where I will be hunting that they don't, that they potentially, if I go out right when season opens or within the first couple of weeks, those gates will not be open until about a month after black bear season opens. So those are some things that I think of and I utilize. I don't do very species specific hunts yet, or an organization. I know people who do it that way. Or I've heard people talk about it that way. I've heard people go about it more season by season. I started off doing this in a sense where I had more overlap between the hunt plans and the actual in the field notes. What I didn't like about that is when I shared with other people, it just got really messy. That was one of the biggest things. Is on the phone, you can actually hide and show these folders as well. You can either come to all content, or your waypoints, your tracks. I run lots of tracks all the time, so that can make an area really messy when I hit it over and over again. So I have lots of different ways to reorganize those things, but be able to pull them in as I come back to that place and look to e-scout it over years. What have I done here? Where have I seen scat? Where have I seen sign? Where have I seen animals? Where have I seen rubs? Where have I seen all those things? Another thing I will do is as I'm coming to those things, I will often try and snap pictures from certain locations that might give me a memory jog of some of the things that I could see. I'm a huge fan of having these hunt plans and having some kind of fallbacks. They have so far helped me every year, and every year with the fires that we get and stuff like that. One of the advantages of the Montana General Tag, one of the disadvantages is that you can pretty much go anywhere. And so having some ideas of okay, this is how long it would take me to likely get there. This is, to change spots. This is when I want to make that change. Here's some things to hit along the way. Here's some points of interest as I get into that area. Places I want to bugle from, see if there might be elk, etc. are all big advantages to have done beforehand, and not scrambling, to do right before you head out over there trying to do on your phone and stuff like that. You can do a way better job on a computer, being able to compare, kind of like we did last time, compare different tools, compare, Google Earth, OnX, whatever, GoHunt, whatever your mapping tool is of choice, compare it with a couple others, and utilize, Google Earth Pro in the midst of that as well. Get different history, photos, get different photos from the history of those places. And I think it can give you a better sense going into it. Nothing beats being in the field, but not all of us have the opportunity to just get out all the time. This is something you can do and set yourself up for some success beforehand, get some sense of the terrain that you're going into, and have a plan at least, so that you're not just kind of like getting out there and being like, okay, well, I'm gonna go here, right? Like you have an idea of what you're looking to do. So this has been helpful to me, both these last 2 seasons. This is the way that I look to organize things. I want to be able to, like I said, pull in content, hide content as needed, and having these kind of variety of main folders, but then subfolders that have more specifics, has really been helpful so far. This could change over time. This was a big shift last year. This last season, I kind of made this shift to where I am today. And have really enjoyed, like I said, the granularity that it gives me. So I'm not sponsored by any of these tools that I mentioned. They just are tools that I have found helpful. I pay for each one of them. GoHunt for a lot of my hunt planning, secondary to maps, just primarily because I've run into issues with it in the field. OnX has been one, not only what the game wardens that I've interacted with have used, but also the 2, I've never had an issue with it once, as long as I've done my due diligence and checking offline maps and stuff like that. And so because of that, like I've stuck with it and, been really happy with it. And then Google Earth Pro to, as a free product, but, some tools and stuff like that from Treeline Academy and things like that too, that I have paid for that, really bump up the benefit and the value that you and the information that you can see in that tool. So that said, I use OnX for probably 60 to 70% of what I do, escouting and stuff like that, and have been really happy with it. I would love to hear if you have ways about doing this, if you have thoughts, ideas. I'd love to hear what other people are doing and just, kind of compare notes and see, there's always ways we can learn and grow and maybe, learn from each other. So, shoot me a message on Instagram at Relentless Raghorn, or comments on this video. Like and subscribe. I really appreciate any interaction with the content. It really helps. So have a good day.